Some winters don't arrive with memory. They arrive with change, a shift in the air, a new warmth in an ordinary day, a color you didn't expect to see. They say life turns slowly in your mid-20s. Quiet mornings, familiar routines, days blending into the next. But sometimes, without warning, someone steps into the stillness, and the world feels different. It wasn't a moment meant to stay. Just a winter afternoon, a thrift store, and a stranger who carried the kind of brightness you notice before you understand why. This is winter's last melody, the colors that found me. After graduation, Haru split his days between his grandfather's farm in Biei and home in Otaru. The work was steady, familiar, the kind of life everyone assumed he would settle into. But that winter, with the fields quiet and covered in snow, something in him felt restless. He began taking the train into Sapporo on his free days, just to see more of the world than the one he'd grown up inside. That was when he spotted it. A small thrift shop on the side street, warm light spilling onto the snow. A hiring flyer taped to the window. Haru paused without knowing why. Maybe it was the warmth. Maybe the colors inside. Maybe something else entirely. He stepped inside. Warm air wrapped around him immediately. Old wood, worn fabric, and the clean, calming scent of hinoki drifting from the small diffuser behind the counter. The man behind the counter looked up, eyes bright, expressive, already assessing him. I saw the hiring flyer outside. Oh, you're here for the job. He leaned in, elbows on the counter. Great. We actually need someone. Let's see. You're wearing a lot of brown. Haru blinked back. Is that a problem? The man pointed at him like he was highlighting evidence. Brown coat, brown sweater, brown scarf, and brown bag. Did you do that on purpose? Or did Brown win the fight this morning? Haru flushed slightly, caught between amusement and embarrassment. I wasn't trying to match anything. The man nodded in a mock serious way. By the way, I'm Itsuki. Coat off. I have to make sure you can reach shelves. Haru hesitated briefly, then took off his coat. Itsuki watched him, not rudely, just observant. Then he nodded. Perfect. You'll do. Haru blinked. Wait, you're hiring me? Itsuki laughed. Absolutely not. I have zero authority. He tapped the counter twice. But I can put in a very confident good word. Haru didn't know why. But that was the moment the shop felt a little warmer. The moment something shifted. And the moment color began inching into the edges of his winter. Itsuki pulled out a deep green knit. This. Hold still. Before Haru could react, Itsuki stepped right into his space and lifted the sweater against Haru's chest, tilting his head to study it. Haru felt his breast catch, not dramatically, just enough that he hoped Itsuki didn't notice. Itsuki definitely noticed. He murmured. Green wakes you up. You have good skin, but the brown is killing it softly. Haru stared at the sweater instead of Itsuki's face. Is this part of the interview? You could say that, Itsuki replied, swapping the sweater for an olive turtleneck. And also our customer service. We need to look approachable. His eyes flicked back to Haru's brown sweater. Not like we're blending into a wooden floor. Haru couldn't help it. He let out a small laugh. Itsuki froze for half a second. Then he smiled, slow and satisfied, the way someone smiles when a puzzle piece clicks. There it is, he said. Much better. Haru blinked. What is? Your laugh. I just needed to see what color it was. Haru stared at him, unsure how to respond. Itsuki didn't wait for an answer. He held up a maroon cardigan next. No, this is too heavy. All right, try that green one I gave you. You mean change right here? Why not? Itsuki cut in. Are you afraid I'll judge your fashion choices? He smirked. Don't worry, I already did that at the door. Haru sighed. I'll use the fitting room, he said firmly. Come on, I need to see the color on you. Haru hesitated. He exhaled softly. Fine. He pulled his brown sweater over his head, folding it neatly in his hands. Itsuki's eyebrows lifted. Oh wow, he murmured. You actually have a body under all that brown. That's good to know. Haru ignored that, slipping the green knit over his head. When he looked up, Itsuki was watching him with a surprising seriousness. That is your color, Itsuki said quietly. Haru blinked, thrown off by the sincerity, smiling before he realized he was doing it. Itsuki pointed at Haru with a quick, triumphant gesture. There it is again. That smile. That's the second time today. Haru stiffened slightly. I smile all the time. No, you smile politely all the time. This one, you're not hiding it. Before Haru could react, the shop doorbell chimed at the entrance. A customer walked in. Itsuki leaned close enough that Haru felt a brush of warm air near his cheek. Watch and learn, he whispered lightly. And just like that, Haru's winter began to change color. At home, his grandfather called it irresponsible, and his parents called it a phase. But the warmth he found here, the way Itsuki moved through winter like he could blend the cold into something bright, made Haru feel for the first time that he wasn't running away from his life, but towards something he hadn't known he was allowed to want. Winter settled into rhythm before Haru even noticed it happening. Days in the shop passed quietly, stitched together by small routines. The sound of hangers sliding across racks, the soft scrape of Itsuki scissors trimming loose threads, the slow, steady warmth rising from the old heater by the window. Some afternoons, Haru would glance up from a book and find Itsuki hunched over a worn coat, patching fabric with the kind of intensity that made the whole room seem to pause. Other days, portfolio pages lay open across the counter, bright colors layered with a confidence Haru never would have imagined for himself. It was easy somehow, falling into step beside him, working in comfortable silence, sharing warm tea during breaks, watching snow drift down the glass as the days folded quietly into one another. And every night, when the lamps dimmed and the shop finally closed, they walked together toward the station. Haru waited at the Otaru-bound platform, while Itsuki stood a step behind him, hands deep in his pockets, as if deciding whether to say something he never quite voiced. The train always arrived too soon. The doors always closed before Haru could linger. And whenever he looked back through the window, Itsuki was still there. The season split itself in two around him. Sapporo days filled with warmth and noise. Otaru nights wrapped in quiet and cold. Two different worlds, and slowly, quietly, Itsuki began to fill the space between them. Snow pressed softly against the window, muffling the city beyond it. Itsuki suddenly straightened, untied his apron, and turned toward Haru with a brightness that didn't match the gray outside. Haru blinked in surprise. Do you know what today is? Haru paused mid-fold. Itsuki pointed at Haru with a kind of theatrical urgency. Today makes 1 month. Exactly since you started here. Haru opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Itsuki continued. And because you haven't run away yet. And because you fall better than my last 3 coworkers combined. And because... His voice softened, just a touch. You make the shop nicer to walk into every day. We need to celebrate. Celebrate what? Itsuki didn't miss a beat. The fact you're still here. Which means dinner tonight. Haru blinked once, twice. He could feel the cold waiting outside the door. He could picture the train timetable he always checked. He could hear his own quiet habits whispering the predictable choice. But something about the way Itsuki looked at him, like he'd been waiting for this day, tilted the moment. Haru exhaled softly. Dinner. Itsuki grinned. Yeah, dinner. You're buying. And I'll buy the beer after. And just like that, winter shifted again. Dinner passed in blur, warm dishes, low lights, the kind of laughter Haru didn't realize he was capable of sharing with someone he hadn't known for long. Maybe it was the heater, maybe the food, maybe the beer Itsuki insisted on ordering. It wasn't until they stood to leave that Haru realized the bill was already gone. "It's our anniversary," Itsuki said. There was something in the way he said it, light but sincere. Whatever the reason, Haru felt lighter as they stepped back into the night. The cold hit instantly. They walked. The city had quieted, snow falling in thin silver lines under the street lights. Haru felt the warmth from dinner fading too fast, slipping from his hands first. Instinctively, he curled his fingers into his sleeves. Itsuki noticed. He always did. "Seriously," he bumped Haru's shoulder. "You didn't bring gloves?" Itsuki stepped in front of him. "Give me your hands." Haru hesitated only for a second before offering them. Itsuki wrapped Haru's fingers in his own, palms warm and certain. He didn't rush, didn't joke, didn't smirk. He simply breathed against Haru's knuckles, slow and steady, until warmth spread into Haru's skin like something intentional, something deliberate, something meant. A quiet shift pulsed through Haru's chest. Itsuki didn't let go. He guided one of Haru's hands into the pocket of his coat, slipping his own hand in after it. Their fingers curled naturally, held securely in the small shared space. "There," Itsuki murmured, low from the beer and the cold and the closeness. Haru's pulse stilled, then rushed in a quiet, dizzy arc. The restaurant's warmth was gone. The city was silent around them. But here, in this pocket, in this borrowed heat, something settled and flared all at once. Whatever it was, Haru felt the spark move fast. They reached a narrow street that branched off toward the station, the one Haru always took. But tonight, he didn't turn immediately. A soft glow spilled from a tiny bar nearby. Haru paused, just for a breath. Itsuki stopped beside him, breast rising in soft clouds. "You okay?" he asked, voice low from the cold and the drinks. Haru nodded. He meant it. He wasn't cold anymore. He wasn't tired. Just warm in places he hadn't felt warm in a long time. Itsuki stepped a little closer, not enough to startle, just enough that Haru felt the shift in the air. "You don't have to rush home," Itsuki said softly. That sentence brushed something loose inside Haru. Snow drifted between them, catching in Haru's hair, melting against Itsuki's coat. For a moment, the city faded into a kind of winter hush. Itsuki reached up, brushing a stray snowflake from Haru's cheek with the back of his knuckle. It was nothing, a tiny touch, barely anything at all, but it was enough. Haru couldn't tell who leaned in first, or how close they were before that moment. All he remembered was the warmth, Itsuki's breast mixing with his, the faint taste of winter air between them, snow melting on their lips as one heartbeat slipped quietly into another. The kiss wasn't slow or hesitant. It wasn't careful. It wasn't shy. It was sudden, fast enough that Haru only caught the shape of it. The press of mouses, Itsuki's hand slipping behind his neck, the way Haru's fingers curled instinctively into the front of Itsuki's coat. Haru's mind didn't capture the details, just the impact. And when they finally pulled apart, breathing lightly, the street felt different. Itsuki's eyes lingered on Haru. "You're not going home," he murmured. It wasn't a question, not a command, just a truth hanging in the cold. Haru didn't answer. He didn't need to, because whatever had just sparked had already shifted his night in a direction that didn't include train tracks, timetables, or Otaru. Just snow, warmth, and the boy standing in front of him, and the door of whatever came next. Itsuki unlocked the apartment door with one hand, while the other stayed wrapped around Haru's wrist. The hurried click of the lock, the warmth rushing out from the entryway. And then, the moment the door shut behind them, everything changed speed. Itsuki pressed him against it, the kind of kiss that stole the leftover coal from Haru's lips, the kind that didn't ask for permission, because the permission was already in the way Haru's melted into it. Haru tried to shrug off his coat, but Itsuki caught the collar, pushing it back from his shoulders in one smooth motion. The coat hit the floor. Their breath tangled. Snow melted down the back of Haru's neck as Itsuki kissed him again. It felt like being pulled into warmth too quickly, too completely, like stepping out of a winter and straight into a blaze. Itsuki murmured something Haru didn't fully hear, already tugging him forward by the front of his sweater. They barely made it past the entryway. Haru stumbled a step, only to be caught at the waist. Itsuki's hands were warm, decisive, sliding on the fabric, pulling him closer. Haru caught the glow of a small lamp and the faint hollow of the heater. But even in the low light, Haru could feel the brightness in Itsuki, the urgency, the hunger, the certainty of someone who knew what he wanted the moment he touched it. Their mouths met again, stronger, deeper, no hesitation anywhere in it. Haru's back hit the wall softly. Itsuki's fingers tangled in his hair. Shirts lifted, half tugged, half pulled. Hands searching, greedy and warm. The kind of closeness that didn't come in slow steps. It came in urges, in rushes, in heat that didn't want to wait for understanding. Haru didn't remember the order of things, not the exact moment they made it to the mattress, not which kiss blurred into which touch, not when his breast turned into something soft and unsteady in the dark. He remembered only the feelings, Itsuki above him, looking down with heat in his eyes, with a hunger that pulled at him, with a kind of gravity Haru couldn't resist. The night answered for him. All he knew was the heat of the moment, the rush of being wanted, the collapse of distance between two bodies moving fast and without hesitation, and somewhere in the blur, in the rise and fall of warmth, in the urgency that didn't slow down, in the breathless press of skin, Haru felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. The world outside was winter. Inside, the night burned. The weeks that followed slipped in quietly. A few nights blurred into several turned into most. And before Haru realized it, their closeness had woven itself into the rhythm of the season. Some evenings, he stayed after closing, sitting on the counter while Itsuki finished repairs, the heater washing warm air over them as Sapporo darkened outside. Other nights, they walked together without discussing plans, their bodies turning in the same direction, steps falling into the same pace. Then one night, with the blinds half drawn and snow pressed against the window like a second curtain, they slipped into the changing room. He didn't remember how they ended up pressed together, just the heat of being pulled close. The way Itsuki kissed him, like the day had been waiting for it. The way winter stayed outside the door, while something much hotter filled the room. After that, the shop became part of their story too. A kiss stolen behind the curtain, when the street outside was empty. A breast shared in the dark seam of the repair table. The kind of intimacy that didn't fit into daylight, but found room anyway. And as the weeks went on, Haru's world shifted around those moments. But beneath the warmth, something else stirred. A quiet ache. A sense that closeness this fast carried shadow he wasn't ready to look at yet. Still he stayed, night after night. They planned the Otaru trip. It began lightly, almost carelessly. They took the afternoon train, windows fogging as the coastline blurred into long stretches of white. Itsuki leaned into the glass, eyes bright at each passing harbor town, cheeks warming from the heater. Haru found himself watching the reflection of that brightness more than the scenery outside. Otaru was cold in a way Sapporo rarely was. Sea wind cold, the kind that wrapped around the bones. They walked the canal first. Lamplight brushed the water with gold. Snow drifted gently, collecting in folds of their scarves. Itsuki slowed his pace, taking in the rows of warehouses, the stone arches, the quiet afternoon hum. Further down, a faint melody threaded through the street, a row of music box stalls. Itsuki lingered there. Haru watched him without asking. They wandered a little longer. By the time they reached the platform entrance, an electronic chime sounded overhead. A scrolling notice lit the signboard in harsh red. All trains operations suspended. Lines to Sapporo temporarily halted due to the severe weather. Itsuki stared at it, shoulders lifting with a small exhale he didn't fully release. Haru glanced at the storm building across the tracks, snow swallowing the far end of the line, wind bending into long arcs. There was no choice. He turned gently toward Itsuki. The decision didn't need words. A short walk later, Haru unlocked the door to his home. Warm air drifted out. Itsuki stepped inside slowly, brushing snow from his hair, his gloves, the hem of his coat. Haru's mother stepped out from the kitchen, surprised for only a heartbeat before her gaze shifted to the storm outside the window. Itsuki bowed quietly. Haru's mother hid a small smile and stepped aside so they could pass. Her voice followed. "Tea will be ready." Haru gave a small nod of gratitude, then opened his bedroom door. Itsuki stepped in silently. Haru's room held its usual warmth, books lined neatly, heater humming gently, the faint scent of laundry still clinging to the air. Itsuki set his bag down and paused. His eyes had caught something on the shelf. A small wooden box, soft edges, gently worn. The carved silhouette of two trees touching at their branches. Without asking, he reached for it. He turned the key once. A quiet melody filled into the room. Haru stood still, watching the way Itsuki's expression shifted. Then came a faint knock. The door slid open just enough for Haru's mother to slip inside, hands steady around the tray of tea. She set the tray on Haru's desk. When she left, closing the door softly behind her, the room grew still again. Just the music. Haru watched him, something tightening gently in his chest. Before he could stop himself, the words slipped out. "Do you want it?" Itsuki looked up, surprised. He lifted the box fully into his hands. He didn't know what the box meant. He didn't know what winter lived inside it. But he accepted it, and Haru let him. Itsuki looked at the music box again, then at Haru. "Thank you. I like it." When the last note faded, Itsuki finally exhaled. "There's something I need to tell you. I got a job offer in Tokyo." The words landed quietly, without decoration. Haru blinked. "Tokyo, designer position," Itsuki said. Silence moved between them. "When?" "A week." The heater hummed. Snow pressed harder against the siding. Haru stepped forward. "Come here." Itsuki didn't smirk this time. He simply moved. Haru wrapped his arm around him, holding him fully, steadily. A careful, anchoring embrace. Itsuki leaned in, exhaling against Haru's shoulder, fingertips curling into the back of Haru's sweater as if steadying himself. Haru held him a little tighter, and Itsuki let himself be held. Some winters stay with you, not for their storms, but for the warmth no one expects to find, the quiet moments, the softness that pulled you forward. For Haru, this was a winter he never forgot, the days that found him and stayed. This was winter's last melody, Chapter 2, The Colors That Found Me. And if you'd like to walk deeper into the memories Haru kept, there's more waiting. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Gay Audiobooks, and leave a comment so you never miss the next part. Before we end, I want to share something quietly. My short novel, Men Being Too Intimate, beginning with The Time We Had, is now available on Kindle. You'll find the link in the description, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it there. Thank you.
Every laugh you try to hide, every shy glance in the window.